Hello, and what are we looking at here? Oasis. So Oasis is the band I've liked since the beginning, as in since they first started. Well, I guess maybe when I did, yeah, 94. I'll get to it now, right? Definitely maybe counted 1994. And the first song I heard off that was Supersonic. I don't know exactly when I heard that. Most things, especially back in the 90s, we were always a few months behind the UK and American market. So I'm sure they were bigger in the UK earlier, but by the time they got down here, there was already a lot of hype around them, like in the music press and what people said about them. But the first song I ever heard was Supersonic, and I thought that was a good song. Then I heard, I don't know, bits and pieces of it. I guess I would have heard cigarettes and alcohol and rock and roll star. I would have guessed, and Live Forever. I didn't buy this album straight away. The first album of theirs I bought would have been at very, very late 1995 or maybe January 1996. What's the story Morning Glory? So I bought this and I love this album from beginning to end. As in subsequent years, of course, a lot of these songs have been overplayed to death. Whereas a song like Wonderwall now, I don't think I'm alone in this. It's a kind of song where you never need to hear it again, really, or kind of hear it once every 10 years, and that would be enough because it's just being played. It's like Yesterday by the Beatles, or Teen Spirit by Nirvana, or Sweet Home Alabama by Leonard Skinner, where the song kind of takes on an identity of its own, separate from the band, because it's just the song. You know what I mean? But regardless, it's a great album. Hello, Don't Look Back in Anger, Hey Now, in particular, I really like that song. Some might say, Cast No Shadow, She's Electric. Actually, no, I was going to say Morning Glory. Morning Glory is my favorite song. I think that song's got a real different feeling, a different energy than any other Oasis song. It's got a much more kind of like a darker, colder feel to it. Whereas most of their songs are quite warm. The style that Noel Gallagher writes them. But a brilliant, brilliant album, in my opinion. And it sold millions and millions of albums around the world. It even did pretty well in America. I'm sure not as well as it did in Britain, but there was a period there where they were one of the biggest bands in the world. And then they had kind of the characters to carry it with the Gallagher brothers, where whatever you felt, you had an opinion, whether you thought, like most people thought, they were twats and arrogant dickheads, or at least Noel was a musical genius or whatever. At least there was something there for the musical press or fans to grab onto, and that kind of helped propel their celebrity and their popularity, or at least their notoriety to an extent as well. So after I heard this album, I went back and bought that album about probably later in 1996, and just like that, I love this album as well. You look at the track listing of this: Rock and Roll Star, Shaker Maker, Live Forever. Live Forever is just such a brilliant song. I remember I had a dream when I was a teenager, and that song was. I had a dream that Noel Gallagher died, and I was watching the news in the dream, and they were showing like a clip of him talking. In the background, they were playing Live Forever. And when I woke up from the dream, I thought, wow, that's quite interesting that my brain did that they used. In my dream, the story was he had died, but my brain had enough whatever to kind of put that song as the background song to the news. Live Forever. Yeah. Anyway, Columbia, Supersonic, Cigarettes and Alcohol, Slide Away. As a debut album, it's a pretty brilliant debut album. A lot of times I guess bands' debut albums are their best work. I guess there's two. It's either their best work because they've had like kind of however many years. Like I think Noel had been writing some of these songs since like the late '80s, so he had kind of like 5 or 6 years to kind of get all his best songs together and put them onto their first album. And a lot of bands are like that, or they have all their energy for their first album, and then it kind of dissipates But other bands, sometimes it's like their first album, they need that to find their feet, and then they get better on the second and third albums. And these albums, actually no, there was one. So there was Noel Gallagher and Liam, his brother. So Liam's the vocalist, Noel's the guitarist and main songwriter. Paul Arthurs, Bonehead, is the rhythm guitarist, and Paul McGuigan, or Guigsy, I think they called him, was the bassist. And on this first album, Tony McCarroll was the drummer, and on the second album, they got rid of him and brought in Alan White. Just by the way, these are all secondhand. All the Oasis CDs I have are secondhand. I've owned them new 20 years ago, but I bought all the ones I'll show you here, in the last 3 years, and they would have been between 50 cents to $2 max. And they're all in pretty good condition. I've played all of these many times, and I've never had any issues. One thing I did notice is that this is a different edition or pressing or whatever than the one I had back in the 90s, because I remember the CD I had when I was a kid, it didn't have the image of the back of someone's head on it. It was just like reflective silver CD with the writing on it. So I'm not sure if it's from another country or something, this one. Maybe it was from the British pressing or something like that. So if you're familiar with their story, come out of nowhere, signed to Creation Records, right, and make a brilliant debut album. I think, here's the thing I was going to say. So this one went on to sell 8.5 million copies worldwide, went straight to number one in the UK, and became the fastest selling debut album in the UK at that time. Okay, so it set a record, and also went platinum in the US. And then again, they had similar or greater success on this one, on Morning Glory. 22 million albums worldwide. The fifth best UK album, selling UK album of all time. Trying to see what it did. So it went to number one in the UK, spent 10 weeks at number one. Jesus, 10 weeks at number one for an album. Anyway, my point is that they were kind of on top of the world. There was a period there where they were, if not the biggest, one of the biggest bands in the world. And so this created a lot of hype for their third album. And the record company and the music press, stoked the fires of hype. It wasn't as though the band were doing themselves. Their management and everyone around was just like they were posing this album to be the second coming and more. And so it built up and built up and built up, and then in 1997 they released this, Be Here Now. And I remember, because I was probably been about 16 when that came out, and I remember that when it first came out, the critical reception was actually pretty positive. I remember getting some 5-star reviews and people saying this is brilliant, this is better than the Beatles. But there was like a period, and then it kind of, I guess people had time to digest it, or the hype kind of faded away and the music remained, and people realized, it's not that great. And then there was a period there where people was like, it's shit. The truth is probably somewhere in between, where it being shit and not that great. It's very overblown. Some of the songs are a bit long, and I don't know what else you could really say about them. Yeah, it's overblown is the way that it's typically represented, in retrospect, is that it's just, there's too much. It's and then the songs don't stand up by themselves. Like if it's a 7-minute song, which so many of them are, or a 9-minute song, if it's a great song, then fine, it can handle that length. But if it's just boring, overblown, overproduced, 24 tracks of fucking layered guitars and all the rest of it, then it's people are probably going to tire of it. I still say that the first album, the first song, do you know what I mean? I like that. I liked that the first time I heard it, and I still like it now. And maybe this is a good time to say there's a channel on YouTube. I think the guy's name is James Hargraves, and he seems like a super fan of Oasis, as in like an ultra ultra fan. But he makes really well researched and in-depth videos about different points in their career and different aspects of the band, not just like this album was so he made one, for example, about Do You Know What I Mean and the meaning of the lyrics. And I've heard that song 1,000 times. I've never thought about it the way that he said. I've always thought Noel's lyrics are very throwaway and just, fine, shine, mine. It's all kind of, whatever rhymes. But this guy broke it down and cross-referenced with books and interviews and personal history of Noel. And he made up like a really good case for the meaning of this song. And I thought it was really well done. I've watched a lot of his other videos. He knows a lot about the band. He researches a lot and just makes some really good content if you're interested in Oasis to that degree. If you don't like them that much, you probably think it's boring. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's James Hargraves. I probably should have checked that. But anyway, he describes the meaning of Do You Know What I Mean? And it kind of gave me a newfound respect for the song. Like I said, I always liked the song, but it made me appreciate it more. It's kind of about Noel's relationship with his father. I don't need to go into it too much because if you want to know, go look on YouTube. Actually, I'll look for that. Hang on. Oh yeah, it is James Hargraves. So the video is Noel Gallagher, his abusive father, and the mind-blowing meaning behind Do You Know What I Mean? It's had 200,000 views. And his name is James Greaves guitar. Anyway, so yeah, they kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say they shit the bed or anything on this album. They were on top of the world and they were never going to stay there forever. And so, yeah, they kind of, I guess, they never reclaimed that. After, I guess, 1997, 98 was their high point, and after that was kind of, it was a slow descent. They released a compilation of the B-sides. So if you may remember, when singles used to be released, there would be the A-side, which is the single itself, Roll With It or Wonderwall. And then there would be a second song that wasn't featured on the album, which was known as a B-side. Because in the old days with vinyl, the A-side and the B-side were obviously a CD. It's not like that. But these were the B-sides for the Morning Glory, definitely Maybe, and I think also maybe for some of the Be Here Now singles. And some really good songs. Some, a lot of these songs you listen to and you think these could have featured on an album as A-sides. They're as good as the A-sides. Particularly Acquiescence, The Master Plan, Going Nowhere, Fade Away. These are really, really good songs. Live version of I Am the Walrus. So that came in 98. Then 99, which is really kind of the end of their super popularity, was Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. So the band kind of went through some changes. Guigsy and Bonehead left the band during the recording of this, I'm pretty sure, about 98, 99. And this was released. And this was the start of kind of, 10 years of Noel Gallagher writing just, I don't know, songs without a lot of energy, very samey, and just so many, even the songs they released as singles from 99 onwards were just boring. The songs that I do like from that period are ones that are completely different. For example, track 1, Fucking in the Bushes. That sounds completely different from anything else on this album, anything else that Oasis has really done before. It's instrumental. Go Let It Out, same kind of thing. That's sounds different. But then we get to ones like, what was it? Sunday Morning Call and Where Did It All Go Wrong? They are just dreary, boring songs. And I can see why this album wasn't reviewed that well and didn't do that well either. They released Heathen Chemistry, I think 2002, so about 3 years after. Wasn't a big fan of that at the time. I've never seen it secondhand. If I did see it secondhand, I would pick it up, but I've never seen it. I don't think it actually sold that well, to be honest. Okay, my voice is going. Sorry, this was 2000, not 99. So Heathen Chemistry, the Hindu Times, yeah, Stop Crying Your Heart Out. Cannot stand that song. And I know a lot of people like that song. And I know they used to use it for some advertising campaign here back around the mid 2000s. But it just like that so perfectly symbolizes that era of his writing. Just boring. Don't Believe the Truth, the album that came after, I do have. I think it's actually not bad. I like The Importance of Being Idle because it sounds different. You know, it doesn't sound like the typical Oasis song. You can definitely hear it is an Oasis song. You can hear Noel's vocals. Liam's not singing on it. But it just sounds different. Turn Up the Sun's okay. Layla is okay. Reminds me of Roll With It, that song. Song that I really do like, Let There Be Love. Very Beatles-esque, but very nice. Not also, I was going to say it sounds like he's really ripped off a song. If you've ever heard the song Retro Vertigo by Mr. Bungle from California, the 1999 album. Mr. Bungle was one of Mike Patton's side projects. And there's a song on that called Retro Vertigo. And the chord progression I'm talking about, if you listen to both songs, you'll instantly know what I'm talking about. It's quite a simple chord progression. It's like a descending. Din, din, din. Well, I can't even do it. It's not a completely wacky chord progression that two people couldn't come up with. I can understand how more than one person could take that, but it really sounds like he's stolen it, and he's famous for stealing it. I watched this video where it played some of the songs that people accuse him of plagiarizing, and I didn't realize there were so many of them, and he's admitted it. Noel Gallagher has admitted that he's plagiarized and played around and changed them, of course, but he admits that he takes heavy inspiration from a lot of other artists. So I don't have the album after this, Dig Out Your Soul, I think what it's called. I did like the single from that. What is it? Shock of the Lightning. That was a good song, but I haven't really heard much else from that album. So yeah, for me, Oasis is just the story of a brilliant first two albums. Classics that will always be classics, and then kind of a slow decline, and then of course break up. I saw them in concert in 1998, and that was the Be Here Now tour. Liam was a bit of a dick, I remember, on stage. I remember he had an inflatable sheep, and he was waving it at the crowd, because if you don't know, New Zealand's often an insult leveled at us as sheep shaggers, because New Zealand is famous for sheep farming. Actually, nowadays there aren't as many sheep as there once were, but that's what I think Australians call us, sheep shaggers, and he brought a sheep to kind of taunt us, which is fine. But Noel seemed like a good guy. He kind of stood on the stage at the end of it and kind of really like thanked everyone, and seemed appreciative of us being there. But yeah, there was a time where I really loved Oasis, and I still do like them.